Hello, everyone.
How are you?
I'm,
Busy, a little busy.
oh, yes. So busy. I was in the wrong meeting. I was like, where's everyone at? Oh, I tell you, it's just one of those days.
You're funny.
I was sitting there doing work, listening to music. I'm like, "Da-da-da-da-da." Oh my gosh, where is everyone? Up. Let me check my links.
Well, you're funny.
So we have Olivia. Hi, Katie.
Me?
Conrad, our speaker.
I was about to say.
Okay.
How are
I'm well.
you?
Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh no, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you donating your time to us. I had to wear my heart glasses for everyone today, especially you, because it's National Love Day.
I love it. They're so cute.
Thank you. All right, so I believe we have Olivia and a couple of other students that will be introducing you and hosting the session. So after you share your experiences and those great things you have been doing in industry, the team will lead in asking questions, and then we will open it up to the floor to the other students. So again, thank you all for being here. Just a reminder that next week we have Donna Donofree, who is the CEO of Ana Ono, breast cancer survivor. And we would like to wear pink for Breast Cancer Month if you choose to, just to have a little bit of fun and show support as well. So if the students are ready to take it away, we are ready to go.
Okay, so hi, I'm Emily Smeriglio.
I'm Stephanie Konya.
And I'm Olivia. Screen sharing, it says that it's disabled.
All right, try now.
All right, can you guys see?
Yes.
All right, so like I said, hi, I'm Olivia. We have the pleasure of having Katie Konrad with us tonight. She is the buyer for Men's Better Sportswear at Burlington. And a little bit about her. So she graduated from Philly U in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in fashion merchandising and industry management with a concentration in buying and global brand marketing. While she was here, she was a part of FIA. And for the past 5 years now, Katie has worked with Burlington in a variety of different roles, ranging from purchase order coordinator, assistant buyer, and now to her current role as the buyer for Men's Better Sportswear. So thank you so much, Katie, for taking the time to be with us tonight. We're so excited to have you here.
Yay!
Oh, that was so sweet. Thank you guys so much for having me. It feels really good to be back. I don't want to admit how many years it's been since I've been here, but I like to think I'm still young, but no, this is awesome. I remember taking this course and other courses, and some of my personal favorite days were when we had speakers. Like it kept me just so interested and engaged in the class and like hearing like the real world stories. Like that's the stuff I most look forward to in some of my classes. So it's really big honor to be the one speaking today. But thank you. I guess I would love to share a little bit with you guys about, how like life kind of started post-college and like how my career has been going with Burlington and how I kind of got to where I'm at today. If that sounds good to start off there, is that good?
Yeah, sounds good to us.
Awesome. So I, just as like a quick little backstory, I always grew up in South Jersey. I grew up in Morrilton. I went to high school in Morrilton, Cherokee, and then right as I graduated high school, I knew that I wanted to be in the fashion industry as my career as I started thinking about college. And, back then, when you think of the fashion industry, at least for me, you instantly just think like, oh, I'm going to be like a fashion designer or a stylist. And you don't really realize how much more goes into the industry and like what that whole business side of the industry looks like. So I graduated high school, and I started out at a community college, and then that's where I started really doing my research and realized that there's this whole side of fashion industry that's buying. It's the business side of fashion. You get to buy the assortments that are in stores, which is I never thought about how clothes actually get to the store before. So I did my research there. I knew that was something I definitely had interest in. And then I noticed that Jefferson, well, it's always going to be Philly U to me, but Philly U had like a fashion merchandising program. So I transferred over to Philly U, and I finished my entire degree in the remaining of my college journey at Philly U. And here, then I just started taking buying classes. I realized even more it was something that I wanted to do. Made my concentration in buying, and then I graduated in 2016, if I want to admit that, spring of 2016, so in May. And then I would say maybe the end of that summer, I was, actively looking for positions, and I noticed that Burlington had an open position for something called a purchase order coordinator. And me knowing, I knew I wanted to stay in the area. I'm still living in South Jersey to this day. I knew I wanted to be a buyer at some point. And I knew that Burlington was a nearby company that's an amazing company. And I knew that Off Price was a really exciting piece of retail. And then that's definitely thriving in the current retail environment that we've been and are living through. So I was like, let me try this purchase order coordinator and see if I can at least get my foot in the door with the company, because I definitely want to be at the company, and then see where I can go from there. So that's where the first year of my career started. So I graduated in October of 2016. I started with Burlington as a purchase order coordinator. And basically what that role is you work with the order entry department of Burlington, which is another area you never really know about, but I really enjoyed the role. Basically what your responsibilities are when you're in that role is you are the one entering the purchase orders into the system that then gets something called EDI to the vendor. So you're that middleman between the buyer and the vendor, and you're how the vendor gets their purchase orders. And you're also how buying is able to transmit changes. So whenever you have changes on orders, things like that, whether it's delivery window dates, whether it's extensions, whether it's how things are quantities of items, that's kind of your job. So it's a cool position. You get a queue and you just work through different submissions. So the buyers will use an email address to send in their submissions of their orders and of their changes, and then you receive them, and then you make the changes, and then you EDI them, and they get sent to the vendor. So I did that for about a year. I did enjoy doing that. That was a very kind of routine position. So, you come in every day, same time, you have your desk, it's full. It was fully in the corporate office. There wasn't really any travel involved. You just kind of do you work through your queue every day and you go home. And then I also started, as I joined that team and was there for 6 months or so, 7 months or so, I was able to start training new, we call them purchase order coordinators. So train new purchase order coordinators on how the job works and how what they need to do in the position on the day-to-day, how to use the system we use called ORS, things like that. So that was a really cool aspect of that position too. But I knew, as much as I enjoyed that, buying was still where my passion was and what I really wanted to do. So I did that for about a year. Burlington does require you to be in position for a year before internally applying for another position. So I did my year in OE, went by super quick, and then I interviewed to become an assistant buyer. That is typically, if you are interested in buying and you are interested in Burlington, you typically start as an assistant buyer. We have a really awesome onboarding program that kind of just takes you through the ropes and like formally and professionally trains you for the job. So I went through the interview process to be an assistant buyer, and I did get the position. So it was a very smooth transition internally, just from one position to the other. And then I started in January of 2018 as an assistant buyer, and I went through the onboarding program. How it basically works is it's 12 weeks, and your days pretty much are meshed between taking the onboarding classes, which are taught by other buyers, by our HR business partners and our learning and development team. They're really great classes. They're very hands-on. And then while you're going through the classes, you're actually paired with a buyer and an assistant. So when you're not in class, you're actually able to shadow them, be a part of their team, be meeting vendors, exposed to every aspect of the job as you're kind of learning it formally in the classes, which is really awesome. So then I finished the 3 months of training there. And then after that, you typically get placed. And what that means is you'll be placed in an open assistant buyer position with a buyer that has an open position in her team. So my first year as an assistant buyer, I was in men's moderate bottoms, which you might first think, oh my gosh, like what is this? But you grow to love it, I swear. So that was like my first year as assistant. My buyer, who your buyer is also your manager, was amazing. That first year, you really learn like the groundwork of the assistant buyer role, which there's two big aspects to the assistant buyer role. So the first is there is an administrative side of it. So you are doing shipping. So you're kind of keeping track of all your purchase orders that you and your buyer have, and you're keeping track of the shipping to make sure your goods are getting here, your receipts are getting here on time. You're partnering with your vendors to communicate with them to make sure things are getting here in a timely fashion. That's a big part of your job. And then writing purchase orders. So you would then take the buy that you and your buyer finalized, you would write it onto a PO purchase order worksheet. Then you would send it to that team I was previously on, and then they would send it to the vendor. So that was definitely a big piece of the first year of buying that I learned. And then just being with your buyer, learning, making vendor relationships, going to market, going to vendor meetings, helping your buyer with what was I going to say, with buys. And you kind of just want to start to become a mini buyer yourself, so you can show that you're ready for the next piece of your career. So yeah, that first year I was in moderate bottom. So it was any type of men's bottom, so denim, shorts, casual pants, and it was moderate branded. So a moderate brand would be like Lee, Wrangler, Hager, Perry Ellis Portfolio, just to name a couple. So that first year I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I mastered the administrative part of the job. And then my second year as an assistant buyer, I got moved over to men's socks, which again, you might think, oh my gosh, socks, but socks was honestly to this day my favorite area. You never will truly understand how much goes into a sock, and how it's made, how many different types of socks there are, cuts, styles, all this stuff. Socks is a really strong business for Burlington too. So it was really cool because all of your management like really believed in your business. When your business is really good in buying, you get additional dollars to spend, which is always fun. So that was a fun area. And in that second area, now that I kind of had the administrative part down, I was able to start using more of my day to focus on becoming a mini buyer. So one awesome thing that Burlington does is once you've kind of shown your manager that you have those administrative skills down, they actually let you start helping by the area. So if, say, my area has like 6 different categories of socks, maybe my buyer would let me have one. And I was kind of like, I got to communicate with the vendors. I got to put the buys together, obviously under supervision, but I was starting to like put buys together myself, looking at the reporting, coming to her with my suggestions, starting to put together strategies, things like that. So that was really my second year. And then my third year, or at the end of my second year, I actually got promoted to something called an associate buyer. And this was right before COVID. So an associate buyer is the next tier up after an assistant buyer. And basically the difference between associate buyer and a buyer is an associate buyer just has, you have your own buying area. It's just a tad, the dollar volume of it might be a little bit smaller than a buyer, just because you're just starting out. And it's a good way to get up and get started. And you may not have an assistant at this point. You may just kind of be doing all the whole life cycle of the buying position from start to finish. So you'll kind of buy your little area, you'll write your orders. You're kind of doing it, doing both sides of the gamut there. And when I got to that position, I actually was in Young Men's Big and Tall for a little, and then I got moved over to Men's Better Sportswear, which I'm in now. And then I did that for about 9 months or so, and then I got promoted again to a buyer. And that's where I am now. And the area I'm currently in now, that I've been in since I was an associate buyer, is called Men's Better Sportswear, like they mentioned. So the area I'm currently in is a collections business. So that means I buy every category of apparel. So bottoms, tops, so like shorts, denim, woven and knit pants, short sleeve tops, long sleeve tops, fleece, jackets, everything. And then we buy it across, we're all assigned like a secluded group of brands. So I currently buy Michael Kors, DKNY, Tahari, Ben Sherman, Perry Ellis, Penguin. And then we have like our little like designer go-gets, and those are typically like very small deals. So like Hugo Boss Theory, Ms. Nemaine. I've done what else? Vince Camuto, those, just to name a couple. That's like a whole another little side. So now that I'm a buyer and currently in my current role, my day-to-day now is a little bit different than when I was an assistant, because now I have an assistant who is learning to be a mini buyer and does some of the administrative tasks, comes to my market appointments with me, is practicing buys, learning. Now, once you transition to the buyer role, it becomes a lot more assortment based, a lot more strategic. It's a lot more strategy. It's a lot of more maybe analyzing reports, and just coming up with the best way to put together your assortment. So now I'm right now we're working on spring 22 up front. So basically we're putting together a strategy for what we want spring 22 to look like. So typically what my day-to-day looks like is I'll come in, we have a style report, we have a checkbook, we have some financial reports. I'll analyze all of those. And then we'll kind of just see, do we have money to spend? And we'll put buys together. And then while all that's going on, we usually have strategies we're putting together for the next season. So management knows like what trends are we going after? What brands are we going after? What do we feel really good about? Where do we want to put our dollars? Things like that. But that's kind of where I am now. I would say one big thing I just want to call it is like, well, how did I get there? And I think one thing I've definitely learned in this short amount of time is that one thing, especially with Burlington, is they 1000% recognize hard work and you get what you put into it. And I think that like it's always so important to work hard, take initiative, and just be like learning and a student in the business always. And that's really how you can get to the next level. There's never any timelines on anything. It's just if you come up and show up and put your 100% forward every single day, I think that they're a true testament of how quickly you can grow an awesome career.
Cool.
But that's like my high level where I am now.
What a beautiful journey. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
One of the things you mentioned was, as part of your daily routine is to look at financials. So when you're looking at those financials, what are you looking for specifically? And I'm only asking because we have some textile design students in the room and
Okay.
they may not be as familiar with those financials that we know and learn about in FMM.
Absolutely. So there's a couple key reports. The first one is called a style report, and that report pretty much recaps for you how every SKU you've purchased that's currently in stores is selling. There's a lot of different things on that report. There's like how many units you, just to high level, how many units you ordered, how many units are currently in the store, and then there's something called a sell-through. It's actually a percent, and it's calculated off of a few different numbers that are on the report. And that's typically like the main thing you'll look at to kind of gauge, like it's a long report, it has every style that you bought that's currently in the store, and every single one will have a sell-through percent. And then you kind of typically will go through that and be like, okay, generally if something has a really high sell-through percent, I can gather that the customer likes that and it's doing really well. I should go buy more of that. I should tell my vendor that's something we want to capitalize on. And then vice versa, if the sell-through percent is lower than what my average would be for that category, that would then probe me to be like, well, why isn't that working? Do I need, is it a quality issue? Does my customer not like that trend? And that's just the important information you would gather from there. So that's definitely one. The second reporting you definitely look at is your checkbook. So you literally get a financial checkbook, just like you would reconcile your own checkbook in your personal life or on your phone. So you get a budget essentially, and the checkbook shows usually shows like 5 or 6 months at a time, and you'll have dollars that you can spend for each month. And that's kind of how, once you look at your star report and you say, oh, this is working, well, then you go to your checkbook and say, well, how much money do I have? How much can I spend? How much can I place per month? So that's one thing. And then another large report we use is called a 370. And this is a big financial report. And this kind of shows you by month your sales. So every area has a sales plan that ideally in a perfect world would like to hit. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you achieve high above, sometimes you don't, but it's okay. But yeah, so the 370 shows you some important things like your sales plan, which is something you would talk to your planner about too. It'll show you your receipt plan. So how many goods you need, like how many dollars of goods you need to bring in to do those sales. It'll show you some of your markdown dollars, which is also important to note because you typically get a budget for markdowns too, and you just want to make sure you're taking that into account and noticing if you're actually based on how your goods are performing, are you marking down more than you were budgeted for? Are your goods doing so well that you're not even using your whole markdown budget? That's typically on there. And another big financial factor on there is called turn. So typically your turn will be on your 370, and typically a good way to think of that is the higher the number, the faster the turn. So you want your goods to turn obviously quick as possible. So that number will typically be on there too. And then all that, this is a very high level, but that's typically what I'll look at there too. So you what are my sales for the month? Am I on track? Am I not? Is there anything I can do to offset that now? Can I talk to my planner? Can I talk to my DMM? Can I bring in more receipts, more goods to try to get to those sales? Things like that. And then the final chunk of reports I would say we use are called property reports or attribute reports. So everything you buy it's called attribution. It's attributed by the type of thing it is. So is it black? Is it blue? Is it green? Is it color block? Is it solid? Is it stripe? Is it a polo or is it non-color? And then I'll typically look at that, and that will show me like percents, like how productive that trend is. So this report will show me, okay, Katie's whole business color blocking is 40% of her sales on 30% of her inventory. So then I would say, oh, wow, like I'm outselling that. That's doing well for me. So that's kind of where I would see what trends are doing for me. And that's a little bit of a numbers report too. So there's more that goes into it, but I would say high level, that's some of the things we look at on some of those financial reports.
Oh, great. Thank you. That was a great explanation.
Good, good. I'm glad.
All right. So are the students ready to pose some questions? It's perfect timing too. We're almost at 5:30, so we're rocking and rolling.
Oh, good. I hope I didn't go over.
No, it's great.
I was gonna ask you, I saw on your LinkedIn that that prior to working at Burlington, you worked at Champs as a server. So I was curious, how would you say that your experience in food service and as a server helped, like when you were transitioning to your position at Burlington?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question. This is actually something I talked about in my interview, believe it or not. And I think I think it helps me tremendously. Such a large portion of this job is communication and building relationships. You want to be a great communicator internally with your team when you're managing an assistant, but most importantly with the vendors. Your goal at the end of the day is to have great vendor relationships. You want your vendors to think like you're their friend. So that when they do have opportunities, they're like, I'm going to come to Burlington first and try to and offer this to them before I offer it to Marmax or to Ross, because I love Katie and we get along so well and I want to make sure she's taken care of. So I would say that all the times when I was waitressing that I was communicating with people, getting to know people. I had regulars at the restaurant that would come and ask for me. Just learning how to build relationships with people and communicate effectively. Number one, easily transferable over to this position because that's so important when building vendor relationships. One other piece of that I would say that my serving position helped prepare me for buying was multitasking. Serving is a very hectic position, and you need to be thinking about and doing multiple things at once. You're waiting on multiple tables at the same time. You're thinking about your food coming out, you're clearing plates. And it's very fast paced. That's exactly what this position is too. There's oftentimes multiple projects going on at the same time that you need to be able to kind of mentally handle at the same time. And also it is a very fast paced position and every day is different. So I think it helped me prepare for that in a sense too.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah, of course.
I had a question. So when you first entered the industry, what did you find to be kind of your biggest learning curve? I'm sure there were many, but kind of like the one that stood out the most.
I would just say all the reports. That was like hands down what really like my first they do say it takes like 6 months to a year of your first year to really get those down, and I can vouch for that. There were just so many, and just understanding how to read them, which one to use for what. And like I remember when as an assistant I had to reconcile a checkbook and I could not figure it out, and I remember sitting at my desk being like looking down like I'm never going to get this. And now I don't even think twice about it because everything just comes with time. And I try to tell my assistants that now too when they all go through the same things. But I would definitely say just the reporting and all the financials and knowing how to read them, number one, because oftentimes there's way more numbers on there than you actually need. And two, knowing when to use them and when not to. That was my biggest hurdle. Now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh, I don't know how I didn't get it. But that was definitely the most challenging, I would say.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So my question was, you obviously went through a lot of different departments at Burlington. You could say like you kind of climbed the ladder. Do you feel like there are more opportunities for growth for you at the company going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. So the great thing about buying is there is a very distinct career path. And there's additional opportunity for growth for me. So just to recap, you kind of start as an assistant, then the next ladder is associate, and then buyer where I'm at. The tier above me is called a senior buyer, and that's definitely where I'm working towards next in the next few years. And the difference between a buyer and a senior buyer is I'm a buyer. I have an assistant who reports into me. A senior buyer not only will have an assistant report into them, but oftentimes an associate buyer as well. And oftentimes a senior buyer may have a larger volume area to buy. And then going off of there, there's something called an MM, which is a merchandise manager. And then from there, there's a divisional merchandise manager. And then from there, you can be a GMM, a general merchandise manager. And then if you really want to shoot high, you could become an EVP one day.
Ooh.
So
Oh, wow. I
definitely-
didn't know there were so many ones above that. So thank you.
yeah, of course. Just to kind of break out for you how it goes. So you have like a buyer and assistant duo, which I'm at right now. Then as you go up, you're kind of getting a larger team. So senior buyer, you might have that associate under you. MM, you might have 2 buyers report into you. DMM has a team of maybe 4 or 5. GMM has the entire men's team. And then the EVP might have men's, kids, and ladies in total. So that's kind of how it builds up.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Hi,
definitely.
Katie.
Hi.
In the queue, when the meeting first opens, when I saw you, I thought you were a student, so you still look pretty young.
Oh,
So
thank you.
my question for you is this: as a merchandising student, do you feel that there was one area of the curriculum or any of the particular classes that you were responsible for that best prepared you for this kind of a job? I know that you never know which direction your employment will take you, and in your case, what do you feel was the strongest factor in the learning curve, so to speak, for what you're doing now? And my other question was, of all the things that you merchandise, what do you like better, like the small areas like socks, or the larger areas like men's collection? So
No.
2 questions.
Yeah, great questions. I'm thinking about the first one, going back to my classes. I would say 2 things. The first one, and I know this probably sounds like the default answer, but I do mean this. I do think the actual buying course was helpful. The only difference is going into off price, we don't really lay out, like, I know like the big project was laying out an assortment plan, which I think they do in like specialty and department store, but in off price, the model's just different. So we don't usually do that in that exact way. But I think the fundamentals were there, and that was really helpful. And then I also would say, I can't remember what the course was called, but we actually went to New York and saw the showrooms, and I never clicked until I actually was in this position, because that's where I actually go to have market appointments. And that was really full circle moment to actually go in for my job. And I was like, I remember when I came out of college, I was like the most excited person in the world. And I thought it was such a cool thing. And now I'm just regularly coming into these types of offices to work. So I think that exposure was really great, because it definitely connected with me and I remembered it going back. And then I would also say, I can't remember what the course was called, but we had to develop a product from start to finish. Professor Freeman taught it.
Global Fashion Insight.
Global Fashion Insight, yes. I want to say that was helpful for 2 reasons. So one, because it's important to know the life cycle of how something is started from start to finish. You don't realize how much of that information you actually need to know. Yeah. Even just as a buyer, like, it's still really important for me when I'm deciding on what to buy to know, like, I know what factories things are made of. I know, like, made out of, especially with all the freight issues we're having now in the different countries, fabrications, how things are made, how much things cost to make. So I know how to negotiate what I think I should be paying for something versus what the vendor's selling it to me for. Development on how things are made. I think that was a great course as well. And then what was the second question again? I apologize.
Of all the things that you've merchandised, because you've had a pretty extensive career so far at your young age, which area gives you the most passion, shall we say? Because you have the socks and you have the men's collection and everything in between. What do you enjoy the most?
I think I enjoy where I am now the most, because which is men's collections. Yep. Because I love being able, socks was great, but it was a classification business. So you were buying, although you're buying different types of socks, it was still socks at the end of the day. Here now, like, I get to play in so many different categories. So I get to, like, not only do I get to choose like tees, I also get to do fleece, and I get to do like polos and non-collar knits, wovens. Like I like being able to put different things together, and it feels like there's a lot going on, but I feel really passionate about being able to, like, I feel proud of myself when I can speak to all the categories because it is a lot. And then I also get to enjoy buying all different things rather than just one classification. Like, so just short sleeve shirts or just bottoms, for example. I find it to be more exciting.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But one thing we all say, and I do find to be true, we all say it at Burlington too, is if you truly love to buy, it doesn't matter what you buy. You just, and I've proven that to be true too. Like if you enjoy what you're doing, you could be buying, like there is a spoon buyer, there is a utensil buyer in home. And like that's, you know, if you love buying, then you just enjoy doing it. You love the thrill of it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anyone else have a question for Katie?
So I don't really know how much in-house design that Burlington does, but do you have a chance to work with the design team and like buy off of their assortment at all?
Yes, we do. So basically, although we are an off-price model, which in most cases means that we would seek out opportunities from vendors where they have excess inventory. That comes from different avenues. Sometimes it's like Macy's or excess mainline that was canceled off or fell off, or they have extra things like that. But there's also a whole piece of our business called upfront production. What percent of your business is upfront depends on the area, but typically we're given a budget of dollars that we're allowed to spend on something called upfront production, and these are goods that are allowed to commit to ahead of time. So I'm actually just finishing up spring 22 now. It's definitely, again, it's not a large part of the business. It depends on what area you're in, if it's larger than others. But typically we'll go to what we call market. They'll show us a line. The design, typically it's my vendor, their design team will join those calls. And I have my dollars and I can pick out of the line like what I want to cut specifically for Burlington, and it gets our tickets put on it. So yeah, there is definitely an aspect. Typically we'll strategically hold upfront dollars for things we fear we wouldn't get in season. So something our vendor doesn't typically stock, or a trend we really want to make sure is on the floor. Like if all else were to fall out of the world, what would we want to have on the rack? And that's what we'll use the money to place. There definitely is, depending on your area, a design aspect where you get to see a line, you get to buy off of it. And then there's even times where I'll send to my vendor like, hey, can you make this notch neck? Like I don't have any notch neck tees in my assortment and this looks really good. And so there is an element to that is in the job, and even in off price.
Interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what has been like the most glaring differences and trends in off price since the start of the pandemic, and then also year to date, if it's different?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm in men's, so I only have visibility to the division that I'm in terms of sales. But I would say when the pandemic hit, the first classifications that took a tank were wovens. So both short sleeve and long sleeve wovens. And I know I didn't know what a woven was when I first started. So it's like a button down structured shirt. We all were not surprised when it took the turn. Everyone was working from home. We were all in sweatpants. We were all in t-shirts. So we weren't totally surprised, but selling there definitely fell because of the pandemic. With that being said, we saw a huge uptick in knit joggers and in short sleeve tops categories. So tees, we call them non-color knits, but basically any type of like fashion, any short sleeve that's like a fashion knit that has like color blocking on it, that's like a little bit of a beefier fabric than just a cotton span tee would be. Those have been really good. We had a really great fleece season last fall because everyone was just wearing full zip and pullover hoodies at home. I would say year to date, it has changed. Things have really turned around, I would say, since maybe the beginning of Q2, which is the April-May timeframe, wovens have completely picked back up. Their sell-throughs are actually higher than they were pre-COVID. I would say denim's picked back up. That was another one that kind of slowed down because everyone was home. So I would say those are the categories that slowed down, and year to date they have picked back up. But that was a really great question. That felt like a Burlington conversation.
Did the has the like I think you said non-collar knits and joggers, have those like still been selling well? Oh, they have. So y'all just increased business and
Yep.
nice.
Yeah, I don't think I have one class right now that's below. That's really like kind of slugging around. I would say if I had to say one, maybe just my class. It's called a woven pants class. So that's where you would see like a 5 pocket or like a chino, like a casual twill chino pant.
Yeah.
Those things are still a little slow, but that was kind of a downtrending category for us pre-COVID anyway. But yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's always so amazing to see what consumers are buying.
Yes, it really is. And one thing with men's is trends don't move as fast in men's as they do in ladies. So like some of the trends that I'm chasing, so like color blocking, skinny fit, bottoms and denim, those have been the same trend since I've been in men's. Like the men's customer moves a bit slower, whereas like the young men's area, they move a bit quicker. They're into like a lot of the licensing, tie-dye. They've been chasing a lot of that. And I know like in our juniors department, our ladies, the trends change so quick that they're in market a lot more than us. They're constantly spinning the wheels. But I would say in men's, it's one nice thing is once you catch a trend, you got a couple years for the most part to chase it.
Were there any surprises with any of the trends you were seeing?
One thing I've learned in buying is you always have to think through the customer and not through your taste. And that's like a good thing too. Like whenever you're looking at, you really just need to like keep honing in on what you're seeing in your selling reports and things like that. And you start to see things through the lens of the customer, not you. So like I'll see this like color blocked shirt and I'd be like, oh, that looks terrible. But I don't even think like that anymore. I just think like that's a bestseller, like, because I know what. So I would say the number one thing that has surprised me is logo things. So I would say that I know I personally wouldn't care for, but like the Burlington customer loves. So like we'll sell thousands of units of a color blocked shirt that says DKNY all over it. And I think that's something that surprised me, but that's like logo is a bestseller for us. And Michael Kors as well. Like I have this knit that I do that has an all over print MK logo repeating itself all over. And that thing is a bestseller like for months now.
Wow.
So I would say that surprises me, but then a good thing to know is just you have to, because I have an assistant who's new to the company now, and I'll be like, oh, do you like this? She goes, personally. And I'm like, well, as the customer, do you think this is a bestseller based off our selling? She goes, yes.
Right.
It's like retrain your brain.
Yeah, kind of have to take you out of the equation a little bit when you're buying.
Yep, exactly.
You have to really know your customer.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I have one more. I don't know if this is appropriate, but in this since COVID and in the industry now, there's a lot of shifts. The biggest shift I find is for the sustainability of a product. Does Burlington address that at all? And if so, how do they do that?
Yep, sustainability is a huge push right now. It's a hot topic. It's something that we're talking about internally with all our vendors. We've started infusing it in the assortment in different ways. So number one is in denim. So I've started introducing sustainable denim. Again, this is a perfect example of things we've had to maybe bring to vendors' attention and be like, hey, we need this in our assortment. Like, so there's a couple different ways people are doing it. So right now I have it in denim and in tees. So in tees, I did like I was able to have them do an organic cotton blend shirt. And that's one way to infuse sustainability. In denim, it's like recycled cotton. So like how much they can call out on the hang tag, like what percent is recycled. And then so basically what I'm sustainability is a big push, but there's different ways to do sustainability, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So either through the fabric, or some vendors are even like, hey, like we can't cost out fabric right now, but what we can do is we can change our hang tag and call out that our factories are using like safe working conditions, like fresh water, like clean water, the
Very
Better
good.
Cotton Initiative. Yeah, so people are approaching it from different angles. We
Right.
are right now coding all that as sustainability, but it is definitely a big push and something we're working on seeing in the
Nice.
market. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. It's pretty cool that we're able to bring that. One thing we've learned, this is a good note in Burlington though, is that the Burlington customer wants sustainability, but they
Yes.
don't want to pay more for sustainability. So that's been a big conversation lately, is like, how can we add these sustainability features and benefits without raising the retail?
Interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah, that was a good question.
I like it.
Anything else that you would like to ask?
A question. Can you tell us a little bit about like your home work-life balance? I know you said like you go to a lot of showrooms. Like how does that work out as far as like, you know, having a family, or like are you clocking in 9 to 5, or is it more of a you get home when you get home?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say perfect pre-COVID typical schedule was office 3 days a week, in New York 2 days a week. Now that we're home, I actually have not even been back to the city in like almost 2 years now. I'm going back for the first time next week. They've been very good with having us at home, like keeping us having us at home, making sure we're all safe, not pushing anyone to go to the city or doing anything they're not comfortable doing, which is pretty awesome. I would say I'm in the same, this is something that I feel really passionate about. I am recently married. I'm thinking about having a family soon. Work-life balance is important to me. I would say two things. It is not a 9 to 5, and I would be transparent about that. And that's something I always wanted someone to tell me too. There are definitely nights when we do have to finish things, like depending on the time of year, but I would say on the average, you're kind of in charge of your business, and you like, yes, I have a DMM, but I kind of handle my own day to day. So I feel like it's kind of just, I typically will log on around like 8:30 and then get off around 5 or 5:30. I need to make sure that I'm doing that for myself. Like no one's telling me to work past 5:30. I have to be the one to be like, okay, Katie, you're done. I feel like honestly, the only battle with work-life balance has ever been myself. To be honest, Burlington is a big proponent of work-life balance, people having families, people having flexibility. They want to hear if anyone is struggling with it. They're very receptive to those types of things. I would say overall it's flexible. Like if I have a doctor's appointment or something, I can go in the morning and come back. I'm not charged PTO, anything like that. I would say the company is very adaptive, and the only battle I've ever had with work-life balance is truly myself and knowing when to turn it off, which I'm getting better at.
Look, I second that.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's difficult to turn it off, especially when you're working from home. But speaking of turning it off, we are going to wrap up. This is a great way to end our seminar for this evening. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us. We really
Thank
appreciate
Katie.
your
Of course.
conversation and what you shared with the students. So I look forward to connecting and staying in touch even more. And thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you guys all so much for having me. You had amazing questions. Feel free. Nyoka has my email if you want to reach out and you have more questions or anything like that. I'm definitely open to that if you guys are. So
Awesome. Thank you. Good night, everyone. I'll see you next week. Same
Thank
time,
you.
same place. We're pink.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Night.